Welcome to a May reading wrap up. I cannot believe I am already saying that because I feel like I just did my April reading wrap up, but here we are. Somehow May is already over. I started off May with a 5-star read. It was one that I thought might be a 5-star potential, but was kind of thinking that I might be disappointed because I tend to be disappointed with this particular genre, but it was In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead, which is a thriller. I find that thrillers tend to either be predictable or super unbelievable, and so it's a very tricky genre to rate sometimes, and sometimes it's really good, but it's not 5-star good, but this one to me was 5-star good. Definitely left me guessing until the very end. If you enjoy thrillers and murder mysteries and stuff like that, I highly recommend this one. It was a lot of fun to read. Then I read Love Her or Lose Her by Tessa Bailey on my Kobo. I was super excited to finally get to read this one. I always hear great things about Tessa Bailey, but had never read one of her books before, and this was actually one of the first ebooks that I ever purchased on my Kobo, which was well over a year ago. So I thought it was about time that I finally read it, and I was very disappointed by this book. I did not like the male main character, Dominic. I think his name was Dominic. I found there was a lot of toxic masculinity, and he was very possessive and controlling and just not my type, that's for sure. And so this book ended up being 2 stars to me. Definitely not my favorite romance. I also have to say that some of the lines and spice scenes were kind of cringy as well, so that was kind of off-putting. I am definitely going to try another Tessa Bailey in the future, but definitely not going to reread this one ever. I was very close to DNFing it, but I thought I'd give it a chance, and I wish I didn't. Then I read the graphic novel Cheshire Crossing by Andy Weir and Sarah Anderson. This one I was super excited for. I feel like after I finished reading it, I originally rated it 4 stars because I thought it was really great. It just felt like it was missing a bit of plot, but then when I kind of thought about it a bit more for a few more days, I realized that it wasn't really 4 stars to me. It's kind of more like a 3-star. I think the artwork was more of a 4 to 5-star range, and the story and plot were more of like a 2-star, 2 to 3-star. I definitely felt like this could have been a little bit more fleshed out. I am not personally a huge die-hard fan of The Wizard of Oz, Peter Pan, or Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, which is what this graphic novel is a spin-off of. It is Dorothy, Alice, and Wendy going on an adventure together after their 3 stories take place, and they are all 3 teenagers in this book. It was a very interesting premise, but I don't think it was executed very well, so for that I ended up lowering my rating to 3 stars after thinking about it for a bit. If you are a die-hard fan of any of these, I'd probably recommend skipping this one just because you might get kind of angry at it. That's kind of the general consensus I got while reading reviews of this one. But if you're like me and you don't know a whole lot about those worlds and you're just looking for a cutesy little graphic novel to read within about an hour, then I guess I'd recommend this one. I don't know. I feel like some people would really like it and other people not so much. Next, I listened to the audiobook I Am Malala by Malala Yousafzai, and I do not rate memoirs, but I will say that this one was very thought-provoking and definitely very inspiring. It was written by a woman who was shot in the face by the Taliban when she was 15 years old. She talks about what it was like to live in Pakistan, and as well as going through that experience and then moving forward after that. So it was a very interesting read, and I definitely feel like I took away a lot from this book, and I feel like everybody could take away something from this book and benefit from it, so I highly recommend this one. Then I was still on a memoir kick, and I finally got to borrow The Woman in Me by Britney Spears from my library, and so I listened to that one as well. It was quite short. I think it was probably about 5 hours on one-time speed. It was not read by Britney Spears herself. She read a little introduction at the beginning of the audiobook, just stating that it would be too hard for herself to narrate it and talk about things out loud. But the narrator who did this audiobook did a very good job, and I was very pleased with her emotions and feelings that she put into her narration of this. Very well done, and I definitely recommend this to anyone who is a fan of Britney Spears or her music. Then I finally finished Chameleon Aura by Billy Chapata. this is a collection of poetry that is kind of about self-care and moving on after loss and breakups. This to me was definitely a 3-star collection of poetry. It wasn't super groundbreaking, and I did find after a while it kind of got a little bit repetitive. Some of the poems felt like they were just poems that had already been written in this, just kind of reworded a bit, which was fine because it kind of made it a cohesive piece, but also it is pretty long as far as poetry collections go, so it just got a little bit dry for me at a certain point. But I did enjoy it, and I got some poems out of it that I could definitely relate to. If you're not into modern poetry, I would definitely skip this one. And then last night I finally finished The Road to Jonestown by Jeff Gwynne. This is a nonfiction book about the Jonestown Massacre, and if you don't know what that is, it is the largest suicide/homicide massacre in American history. I think in total about 918 people died in the Jonestown Massacre. This book starts all the way at the beginning with Jim Jones, the cult leader's parents, and how they were raised, and then how he was raised and ended up starting the People's Temple, eventually convincing people to come to Jonestown, and ultimately the Jonestown Massacre. It was a very, very eye-opening read. There's definitely stuff about that I did not know because I didn't know too much about it going into it. I will also say it is quite graphic at times, and it can be really hard to read because obviously it is real life and this all really happened. I ended up rating this one 4 stars just because I found, though it was really well researched, it was a little bit too detailed and got a little bit boring at times, just going into different members' lives. I thought some of those things could have been shortened a little tiny bit. Overall, quite an interesting read as far as nonfiction novels go. Definitely recommend that one if you're into like true crime and stuff like that, but once again, just make sure you check the content warnings first. But that is it for my May reading wrap up. I ended up reading 7 books. I listened to quite a few audiobooks this month, which is not like me, but it was kind of a nice change. I got to do a lot of yard work while listening to audiobooks, and I really loved that. So I'm hoping to do that a little bit more, definitely in the summertime when I've got like lots of gardening and stuff like that to do. So stay tuned for the month of June for that, I guess. With that, I think I'm going to leave this video here. I hope you have a great rest of your week and happy reading.